Namo Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to the Buddha Dharma TV. I am Agnes Gay. Today, we begin our program with Jaya Mangala Gatha, stanzas of joyous victory, and it is by Wayfarers.
Bahum Sahasamabini Mita Sayudantang Diri Mekalang Udita Gora Sasena Marang Dana Jita Bangulindo Tampe Jasa Babatute Jaya Mangalani
Good triumph over evil. With gentleness, overcome anger. With charity, overcome stinginess. With truth, overcome deceit. This the Buddha taught. When the Lord was stormed by Mara, challenged to a battle by Alavaka, and attacked by the ferocious elephant, Nalagiri, He subdued them all with his perfection of giving, patience, and all-embracing love. By the power of that spiritual glory, may joyous victory be yours. Bahum Sahasamabini Mita Sayudantang Diri Mekalang Udita Gora Sasena Marang Dana Jita Bangulindo Tampe Jasa Babatute Jaya Mangalani Marati Reka Mabiyu Jita Sabarati Gorang Manalavaka Mata Dayaka Kanti Sudanta Vidina
are presenting the second part of the talk entitled Understanding the Nature of Fear. The second part. Here is Venerable Kovida from Canada to talk on the topic.
And also what is interesting is that when we look in the mirror and you see an image, right, we relate to that image. We think that image is who we are. And half the time we're not pleased with that image. And some days you look in the mirror and you say, well, today I'm not too bad. You know, I'll never be a beauty queen or a fashion model, but today I'm okay. But then 2 days later, you look in the mirror and think, oh my God, I look awful. What happened? And what the Dhamma is showing us is that that image that you see, who you think you are, is not really you. It's just a physical body and it's changing. It's subject to change. Another good example, you can try this. Look at your photos. And you can see that the body is aging. And think, oh my God, I'm getting old. I thought I was young. Now, you know, I'm an old man or an old woman. But somehow, say if you're feeling fairly healthy, somehow you feel the same. Have you noticed that? The photos that you're seeing is aging, but somehow you feel the same. It shows you that who you really are is not the photos, is not the aging body, but is the awareness. It's the awareness. And another good example, maybe you've had this experience where, you know, one day you're not feeling very well. You know, you're just not in a good mood. Maybe you're also sick. But you're just not in a good mood. And you happen to meet a friend. And the friend says, wow, you're looking so lovely today. And you're thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Because, you know, what you're experiencing, how you're feeling, has nothing to do, you know, with that image that your friend is seeing. What we call the public image. Very interesting. But we're so attached to that, you know, that external image. I know in the West it's like this, in North America, they're so attached to the image. And every time you meet somebody, it's a social habit. You have to pay a compliment, even if you don't mean it. Half the time you're actually telling lies, you know. But you know, you want that person to feel good, right? And of course, when you're brought up in that type of conditioning, that type of society, you become very attached to compliments. And when we're very attached to compliments, naturally, we're afraid of the opposite, right? We're afraid of, you know, being blamed, being criticized, and so on. So this is why people pay you a compliment, you can say thank you, but don't be attached to it. Don't take it too seriously. And of course, the real challenge, if somebody is criticizing you or blaming you, you just smile and you say thank you also. But don't take it personally. Because you find that when you don't react to somebody's unpleasantness, you realize it's their problem, it's not yours. You understand? It's their problem. It's their mental defilement, mental delusion. It's not you. Yeah. This is why the Buddha's advice, there's a lot of wisdom in that. You know, when you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. regarding the fear of not achieving enlightenment, of becoming an arahant or a bodhisattva, Ajahn Chah, you know, the very wise forest monk from Thailand, he gave a very, very wise advice to this. He said, don't be an arahant, don't be a bodhisattva, don't be anything at all. Because if you think you're somebody or something special, you're going to suffer. Don't be an arahant, don't be a bodhisattva, don't be anything at all. Because if you think you're someone special, you're going to suffer. There's a lot of wisdom in that. And this is why an aspect of practice is learning how to be. Just when you're calm, when you're feeling peaceful, you can just be in that state of just being. That is the awakened state of just being. Because normally we are called in becoming. In Dhamma language we say becoming, meaning the craving, to become something, to achieve something, to get something, to possess something, and so on. Of course, in daily life, if you're in the working world, there are certain things you have to do, certain things you have to achieve, right? But if you're always caught in this becoming, this constant striving, you will always experience that fear, the fear of not becoming, fear of not achieving, not having, and so on. So in that state of being, just being calm, being present, you're free from all this becoming, striving, and the fear of not becoming. So you're free from time. Just like when we have regrets. Sometimes there's also an aspect of becoming, but it's related to the past. When you say, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Or if I just thought about it, earlier, things would be much better. Why didn't I think of it before? I'm so stupid. Right? There's an aspect of becoming. But it's related to the past. But in that state of being, you're free from becoming in the past and becoming in the future. It's just a very peaceful state, and you're free from time. So this is why, if you're in the working world, it's very beneficial, even for half an hour or 20 minutes. When you're at home, just learn how to be. Just come back to the present moment. And if you're feeling some kind of stress, then you do something physical, whatever it is you do, just to release that stress, that physical stress. Whether it's running, brisk walking, swimming, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, whatever you do, even dancing. Just to release that physical stress, physical tension, and then you just sit quietly and just come to that timeless state of just being. Now, what are the connecting factors of fear? The most obvious factor of mental psychological fear is, of course, thinking, right? If it's mental psychological, it has to be thinking. That's the main factor, thinking. And with thinking, there is time, right, as past and future. Because thinking is what creates time, as past and future. And time is also a factor of anxiety and also stress, right? There's so much to do and so little time. So thinking is related to time. Thinking is time, as past and future. And the third factor is desire, craving. Any form of craving, desire, expectation. That's one of the factors of fear. As we mentioned, whenever we have any kind of desire, craving, expectation, there's always fear. Right? The fear that you won't get what you want. So those are the three factors. Thinking, time, and desire. Craving. You can reflect on it. And desire also includes expectation. Right? When you're expecting something, that is a form of craving. Right? Needing. And we get to the root of fear. And the root of fear, of course, is the self, strong attachment to the self. And when we investigate, we begin to see that the self is not something permanent or separate. It only feels that way. But it's just a conditioning in the mind. And because we're caught in this illusion of a permanent, separate self, we tend to ask this question: what happens to me when I die, and where do I go after death? It's a very ancient question. And people are asking the same question today. And in future, they'll be asking the same question. So the I feels separate. And as you know, the Buddha was the first person to realize that the self is just a conditioning of the mind, based on thinking, memory, and the use of language. I, you, he, she, and so on. So we all have a self. We cannot avoid it. We've been conditioned with this idea of, I, me, mine. But when you investigate, we begin to see the nature of it. Now, for example, when you meet somebody for the first time, and you naturally talk about yourselves, what do you talk about when you talk about yourself? It's all personal history, isn't it? All based on memory, right? Where you were born, your family background, elementary school, then high school, college. Think about all the books you have read, all the movies you have seen, things you have seen on television. Internet, everything that you see on internet. And if you've traveled, you speak about your travel experiences, right? And where you'd like to travel to next time. And of course, if you're in the working world, you speak about your work history, right? Speak about your work history. In other words, who we are as a conditioned being, conditioned self, is all based on memory. Personal history, collection of memories. That's all. And then we have the unconditioned state of mind, which is present moment awareness, the knowing. And a good example of this, of the conditioned self that we all have related to memory, is when somebody suffers from amnesia, temporary memory loss, right? And somebody who's suffering from amnesia, you can imagine how scary it is. It's very confusing, very scary. Simply because when you lose your memory, you don't know who you are, right? Because we identify with all our memories, this I, the conditioned self that we have, including not only pleasant memories, but also unpleasant memories. So this is why when we practice, when we do Dhamma practice, and we realize the unconditioned state, which is present moment awareness, mindfulness, is who we really are in the present moment, the unconditioned state. So yes, we have memories, we have all these past experiences, but we become, we become less attached to them. They're still there. You can't get rid of your memories unless, of course, if you're having Alzheimer's. But apart from that, it's really learning how to relate to your past experiences, including unpleasant memories. And as we said, unpleasant memories seem very permanent, very solid, simply because there are emotions involved, if they trigger any emotions. But with mindfulness, we begin to see that unpleasant memories are really just thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. They may be related to past experiences, but the actual experience itself are just thoughts and images that are happening now. And that is the wisdom of mindfulness, present moment awareness. It's only thinking, thinking, thinking. So we just see them as just thoughts and images, and we let them go. And if they happen to arise again, later on, same thing. Only thinking, thinking, thinking. And you let them go. Because they are impermanent. They are only temporary mental objects. They arise and they pass away. Just like when you're thinking about the future, it's the same thing. They're just thoughts and images that are happening now. Of course, sometimes we have to think about the future. But the only thing is that if we become too obsessed, right? If we become too obsessed, then we experience, anxiety, fear, and so on. So have those future plans, future goals, but don't become too attached to them. Because the future is uncertain. And sometimes we achieve certain goals and we're disappointed. It's not what we expected. And sometimes our priorities change, because we are changing. And yes, sometimes there's a sense of accomplishment. You've achieved something and you feel good. But then that experience doesn't last very long. I would say about 2 weeks maximum. 2 weeks maximum. And then you begin to look for something else, some other goal to achieve. And then there's a very unique situation where there are a few people who are able to achieve all their goals. Say even in middle age, say even in their 40s, they're able to achieve all the goals that they had. And they felt very happy, very satisfied. But when that sense of achievement went away, they began to panic. A very unique situation. And I had a friend who experienced this very same thing. He achieved all his goals, as an emergency doctor. He felt a sense of accomplishment, but after 2 weeks he began to panic. And he began to panic simply because there are no more goals to achieve. You see that? But the craving mind is still in operation. And that's why the panic sets in. And if you're not mindful, in desperation, you want to achieve something else, something that you really don't need. But that's the nature of the craving mind. So I told my friend in Singapore, thanks to the speed of internet, it's time to sit on your cushion and learn to be. They're caught in craving, and that's why you're panicking. You're always craving to achieve another goal. It's time to sit and just learn to be. Just the peace, the simplicity of just being. No more becoming and the fear of not becoming. So how do we deal with fear when fear arises? One way is to apply mindfulness, and we objectify the fear. Because mindfulness, awareness, gives us that ability to see something objectively and let it go. So instead of saying, I'm scared, I'm afraid, you say, there is a state of fear, or there is fear. And you remind yourself, this is impermanent. It's a temporary mental state, a changing condition of the mind. Because when there's fear, that fear seems very real, doesn't it? And of course, when you're paranoid, you're totally deluded by that fear. It's very real. It seems very real. But when we apply mindfulness, we see fear as just fear. And we know it is impermanent. This too shall pass. And then we can do loving kindness meditation. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May I be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. Another way, as taught by Thich Nhat Hanh, the well-known Vietnamese teacher, he calls it mindful breathing and smiling. Breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. And you smile mindfully at the fear. Breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. Likewise, breathing in, I know there's frustration in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there's craving in me. Breathing out, I smile. This too shall pass. It is impermanent. Another way is to do mindful chanting. Something that's very simple. Because when you can do mindful chanting, you let go of those thoughts that are creating the fear, the worry, the anxiety. We can do this chanting afterwards. So at this time, are there any questions? Any questions that you'd like to ask? But the reflection on the body and the mind as a process, constantly changing process, is one way of seeing that the I, the self, is not something which is permanent and is not something which is separate from the world. But we feel separate because of the conditioning that we have. Is called duality. And duality starts very early when a child begins to speak. When a child begins to say, I want this, or I want that. I don't want this, I don't want that. I like this, or I don't like that. That is the beginning of duality. Duality means subject and object, right? And the I is always the subject, right? I like this, I don't like. I want, I don't want. That's it, duality. And this duality becomes more deep-rooted in the mind. When we begin to say, I am seeing something, I am hearing something, I'm smelling something, I'm tasting something, I'm feeling something by touch, and I'm thinking something. Yes, the duality continues. So the I begins to feel separate. And what is interesting is that really the senses are sensing by themselves. There's really no I who's actually seeing something, or hearing something, or smelling something, or tasting something. And this was one of the insights of the Buddha. We only believe that there's an I who is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking because of her habit of identification, right? We identify with these experiences. So we say, I'm seeing something. I think we did this experiment before. For example, just look at the Buddha statue, okay? Now close your eyes for a moment, and then open your eyes. You see that seeing arises automatically, doesn't it? You don't have to make a special effort to see. You just open your eyes and they're seeing. In other words, there's no I, no me who is seeing the statue. There's only seeing. And you recognize that it's a statue. That's what perception is. Perception means you're able to recognize something because of memory, previous experience. In the same way, you don't have to make an effort to hear the speaker, right? As long as your ears are healthy, there's only hearing. And you begin to eat something, and tasting arises naturally. And when you go home this evening, and if you're eating something, you can try that. Say, okay, I'm going to eat this thing, and I'm going to try not to taste it. You can try that as an experiment. I'm going to try not to taste this. Right? You see, whether you like it or not, tasting will arise, right? There's no I who's tasting the food. There's only tasting. Right? Your body touches something, and there's just feeling, touch, sensation. But we're so conditioned, right, to identify with experiences. You know, I am this, I am this, I am this. So we're caught in that duality of separation. And the I seems permanent, right? And part of it too is the use of language. Because you know, if you have to speak a lot, say in one day, all right, you have to use the word I, and if you're speaking a lot, you can use this I hundreds of times. So it gives the impression in the mind, in consciousness, that the I is rock solid. It's always there. It's everlasting. Because we keep saying I all the time. And if you're speaking Mandarin, you use the word wo, right? Wo. But if you're mindful, you realize it's just a label that we have to use to communicate. That's all. So we can still use I, you know, when we're speaking, but we have this understanding. So in other words, we don't take the I so seriously. So the problem is not the I, the self, but is a strong attachment to the self. When we take ourselves too seriously. We think it's permanent, and we think it's separate. It's separate from the world. And that's why we ask that question, what happens to me when I die, and where do I go after death? Because as long as you are trapped in this I, in thinking wants to continue after death. Because, as we said, thinking is related to all our experiences, right? All our memories, all the information we have, including all our attachments. Everything that we know. And we're afraid to let go of our attachments. So we want to continue somehow after death. And that's why we have created many beliefs in an afterlife. And there are many beliefs, many beliefs. As I said before, the belief in reincarnation or rebirth is only one belief. There are many. One of the interesting insights that the Buddha had was the whole nature of consciousness itself. Because he related consciousness to the senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And he realized that thinking, that consciousness is always changing, it's not something permanent. But many people believe that consciousness is permanent. But it's always changing. For example, say before you came here this evening, say if you ate something, a part of consciousness included tasting and smelling, right? But now there is no tasting or smelling. So what do we have in consciousness at this moment? There's seeing, hearing, and feeling, right? You feel your body sitting. Now again, close your eyes. There is no seeing consciousness, but there's still hearing and feeling. Now open your eyes, and there is seeing consciousness again. That's the nature of consciousness. It keeps changing. In other words, consciousness is its content. Whatever happens with our sense experience, that's a part of consciousness. And when you go home, if you start to eat something or drink something, then tasting and smelling will arise again. And tonight, when we all go to bed and we go into deep sleep state, there is no consciousness. The deep sleep state. And for adults, it's between 1 to 2 hours. For young children, deep sleep state tends to be a bit longer. But for adults, it's between 1 to 2 hours. There is no consciousness. In other words, the world as we know it does not exist in deep sleep state. We actually die, mentally. The body might be alive, but mentally, psychologically, nothing. This is why there's an old saying. When somebody is in deep sleep and they're not aware of anything, we say that person is dead to the world. That's an old saying. Meaning you don't know anything. Malaysia does not exist. Even your family and friends do not exist. If you're working, your job does not exist. And you're crazy, a supervisor does not exist. It's good to know. But when the brain comes out of that deep sleep state, the thought process starts up again. And that's what we call the dream state. And if you observe your dreams, you see they're mostly just memories all mixed up. Have you ever noticed that? They're all mixed up. Plus some fantasies. Sometimes you have some anxiety, in your daily life. Sometimes it comes out in your dream, right? And very often, if some important event is coming up, you tend to dream about it, right? Something important is going to come. You tend to dream about it, including taking a trip somewhere, right? And you're looking forward to it. Very often, you'll dream about it. And sometimes, say, if you're flying somewhere, you have some difficulty getting to the airport. And yes, you miss your flight. But when you wake up, oh my God, thank God, it's just a dream. It's just the nature of dreams. Yeah, it's all memory, information, all mixed up. Very interesting. And then we wake up, and the world comes back. The world of, say, Malaysia. The whole world comes back into existence. So in other words, it is consciousness that creates the world. Through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. This is why the Buddha said, mind is the forerunner of all things. We experience the whole world, including, the external physical world, through the mind. And again, the good example is the statue. Right, there's a physical statue here, but you close your eyes again. One more experiment. You close your eyes for a moment, and you open your eyes, and you see that your experience of the statue is in the mind, right? Through seeing consciousness. That is what the Buddha was pointing to. Mind is the forerunner of all things. Okay, any questions? Any questions? Sorry? Huh? Where's the mind? Never mind. The mind is asking that question. Yeah, it's all here. It's all here. Okay, there are two aspects to the mind. There's the conditioned mind, which is thinking, right? Thinking and memory and information, right? And future projection. That's the conditioned mind, the thinking mind. We all have this. And then there's the unconditioned mind, which is awareness, the knowing. So the awareness we had as children is the same awareness we have today. It doesn't change. The only difference is that a child does not understand this. But as adults, we can understand it. It's unconditioned. All right, you see the difference. Yeah. So sometimes we need to use the conditioned mind, thinking, memory, information. And when we don't need to think, we come back to the unconditioned state. Awareness and knowing. and that state is peaceful. Yes. How can somebody transfer merit to another? You mean somebody who was passed away? Or just... Well, you see, personally, I don't believe that just by saying a few words, say in Pali, that you can actually transfer merit, to somebody, whether they're alive or deceased. Although it seems like a nice idea. The merit comes from your own understanding, right? Your own practice, your own mindfulness, and naturally that improves your state of mind. All your wholesome qualities. That's where the merit is. More kindness, more compassion, more patience, the ability to forgive others and to forgive yourself. And automatically, those good qualities from your practice, you can use the word, naturally, it affects your relationship to others. How you relate to people in the society. Because life is based on relationship, right? You see what I mean? That is how you affect society. But I know it's part of the Theravada tradition, to say a few Pali terms and you transfer merit, usually to deceased people. But this is my understanding. But if people would like to transfer merits, fine. They can do it, if it makes them feel good. Yeah. Yes, as I mentioned before, many people in Malaysia, they see karma as something that you store somewhere. It's like having a bank account. You have one account for good karma, one account for bad karma. But from my understanding, karma is simply cause and effect. What you do and the results of that action. And if you're aware, you can see this. In other words, karma is something which is always happening. Right? What you do and the results of what you do. Right? For example, sometimes, say, you have something to eat and you get stomach upset. Simply cause and effect. It's something which is happening all the time. Because the meaning of the word karma is to do what you do and the results of that action. Okay? Just reflect on it. Just reflect on it. You see, part of human nature is because we don't really investigate, or we don't know how to train the mind to investigate things. We tend to want to find easy, convenient answers to explain things that we don't understand or that we cannot control. Then we say, oh, it must be past karma. And a good example of that was when they had the Indian Ocean tsunami. many years ago. I think 2004. And what did the Christians say? God was punishing the sinners. The Muslims said more or less the same thing. You know, Allah was punishing the non-believers. And the rest of Asia said, it must be past karma. That was causing the tsunami. They're being punished by the tsunami. I'm sorry to say this, but that's nonsense, rubbish. Because natural forces, natural disasters have nothing to do with karma. You understand? Because karma is what we do and the results of that action, cause and effect, and so on. But it's a part of human nature, right? We just want easy, convenient answers to explain anything we cannot understand or is beyond our control. Right? It's God's will. See, so easy, right? Blame it on God. Or blame it on past karma. So I used to say, poor past karma. It gets blamed for everything. Yes, sir. Sorry, I can't hear.
How do we explain our words in this life? I mean, they're not all the same. They're different. Like we are born in different places, and we live in various countries. So, I mean, we have in the past always said that that's our previous, baggage we're bringing with us.
Actually, it's very simple. One night, our parents got together to have a little fun, and the conditions were right, and here we are. Very simple. But we tend to forget that. Right? Yeah. Because people say, where was I born? There must be some special meaning. I said, no la, no special meaning. It's biological, okay? It's just biological. And the conditions happen to be right. Yeah. Because some couples would like to conceive, and they can't simply because the conditions are not there. And sometimes they do conceive, but the conditions in the uterus, is not right, so there's miscarriage. You understand? It has to do with cause and conditions. Don't blame it on poor past karma or God. Or let's just say it's nature. Because really God is nature. It's just a symbol of nature. That's right. And nature is very complex. It's a very, very complex thing, when we investigate. It's not just some trees and birds and cows eating grass out in the field. Nature is much more complex, than meets the eye.
Can you equate the Dharma as nature?
That's right, yes. It has to do with the laws of nature. The laws of nature. How things are interdependent, interconnected. That's right. Things happen due to cause and conditions, and so on. Yes.
My name is Jasmine. Recent year, I feel surrounding me that is many teenage that have this we so-called a mental emotional. They always think something that's always repeating in a sadness way. Like when you ask one, they say they are sad due to some reason. When we ask question 1, 2, 3, they come back to 1, 2, 3. That means in circle, they're thinking. So as a listener, like me, as a mom also, I just wonder how to help those children like teenage. Sometimes they are 14, 16, even 18. I always believe in God, but children, teenage now is not. Yeah, and I try many ways. Sometimes I try to talk about Buddhists, talk about religions. Difficult. Maybe I'm not experienced enough.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Because it's important that you have children to understand that we're a part of nature. We're not separate from nature. You understand? So in other words, if you believe in God, that's fine. But if other people don't believe in God, that's also okay. But the important thing is to understand that we're a part of nature. We're not separate from nature. And for example, just look at the body itself. You see that the body belongs to nature. It's not really a personal thing. For example, if we tell the body not to get sick, does the body listen to us? It doesn't. The body will get sick due to certain conditions, right? Just like if you tell the body not to get tired, not to feel sleepy, not to get hungry, not to go to washroom, and so on, the body will experience those things because it follows its own natural laws. Just like aging, right? If you tell the body not to age, the body not to die, the body will age, the body will die. Because that's the nature of the body. In other words, it belongs to the changing conditions of nature. It doesn't belong to a self. And how everything is interrelated. For example, the oxygen we breathe is what the trees, they exhale. They produce, for example, trees that produce fruit, we can relate to those trees, right? Because we eat those fruits. But even trees that do not produce fruit, we're still related to them, right? Because they breathe in carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen. And we breathe in oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. So in that way, we're related. Another good example is just drinking. Where does the water comes from? Any liquid at all, there are clouds. So we are related to clouds, and of course the rain. And the sun, the energy of the sun, and of course the oceans. So we are related. We don't exist as some separate entity, independent entity. Yeah.
We no need to use the religion to talk. We can use the natural to talk with them. Basically, your thinking shouldn't talk just only yourself. My understanding, what Pandit tried to teaching us is like to use the natural to talk with them actually is related to the whole nature that we have in the earth. It's not just yourself.
Yes.
Hi, thank you.
That's right.
Yes.
And actually God is just a symbol of nature. But we create an image in our mind. But actually it's just a symbol of nature. Because I grew up as a Christian. So I was always asking, who is God? Where is God? And I was always looking for God. Because they say, if you do anything naughty, God is going to punish you. So you have this fear. And they say God is everywhere, but I'm looking, there's no God. Because I've created an image that God is this, this big man, right? And he's carrying, a big stick. So I was always looking, but eventually I began to understand that really God is just a symbol of nature. And when you investigate, you see that nature is very, very complex. Very complex. Yeah. It's a very complex web, like a spider's web. Yeah. Life is a very complex web of interconnectedness and interdependency. But when we're caught in thinking, we don't see this. Because I feel separate and we don't see how things are connected. And one thing you could share with the children is this dynamic meditation. It's an easy form of mindfulness. I'll give you the link on YouTube. Yeah. Because it's a very easy practice. I'll just demonstrate it. So this is a very easy way to focus the mind. And you can let go of thoughts, let go of unnecessary thinking. Because sometimes the mindful breathing is not easy, right? Because of the wandering mind. So this practice is very good for young people, for teenagers and so on. So I'll give you the link. I'll give you the link. Yeah. Okay, so very briefly, I'll just do the mindful chanting that you can do if you're having some fear or any disturbing thoughts in your mind, including worry, if you're worrying about something. And the words are Gatte, Gatte, Para, Gatte, Parasam, Gatte, Bodhi, Svaha. It's in Sanskrit. And it means going well beyond the world of ignorance and delusion. Going beyond the illusion of duality and separation. Rejoice in the freedom, bliss, and peace of awakening. Okay, so I'll start and you can join me. Gatte, Gatte, Para, Gatte, Parasam, Gatte, Bodhi, Svaha. Gatte, Gatte, Para, Gatte, Parasam, Gatte, Bodhi 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 Svaha. Gate gate para gate parasam gate bodhisvaha. 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 So may you all be well, happy, peaceful, and may you all be free from fear. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Marati reka mabiyu Jita sabarati Gorang panalava kamaka Mata dayaka Kanti sudanta vidina Jita vaunindo Tang tejasa bhavatu te Jaya mangalani
Our next segment features Venerable Dr. Chandana as he explains convincingly Patama Rohogata Sutta from the sacred text of the Samyutta Nikaya. In this discourse, Venerable Anuruddha, an enlightened monk at the time of the Buddha, explores 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, both internally and externally, focusing on origin and cessation, and cultivating mastery over perceptions. This is the 4th part of a captivating series on this sutta by Venerable Dr. Chandana.
Watch the breath. Watch the body posture. You don't have to follow the breath. I know it can be hard to stay with it, especially when you're doing metta. You can walk with metta. That's what I've been trying to teach you. Walk with metta, touch with metta, smile with metta. Every time you toss and turn in bed, can you turn with metta? And it might switch on you. It might suddenly turn into upekkha or mudita. You hear a baby cry somewhere at night, early morning. Suddenly your heart starts overflooding with mudita for the child and also the parents, because now they have to get up. What if they have to go tomorrow to work? Chances are they are. It feels, oh, you don't feel pity, but you're feeling what the child, the baby, the infant. So all this is happening while you had a moment of wakefulness. You don't dwell on it. You don't lean into the experience. You say, oh, see that? I have mudita. I should report this. No, you're just there. You're observing all these things happen. That's all. The bhikkhu thus meditates while observing the relationships of phenomena with keen interest, careful attention, and mindfully, without having any desire to avoid nor lean into the relationships of phenomena. Also, the bhikkhu meditates while observing the relationships of whatever phenomena that arise or take place within and those arising due to the outside causes. And it's the same formula, but in this case, it's the Dhammanupassana. And if he so wishes, while I meditate thus, may I be able to perceive the repulsive in what is attractive, he is able to do so. Again, in this case, every one of these repetitions in each of these sections is pertinent, connected to that satipatthana. Okay, so in this case, it is someone who is practicing the Dhammanupassana, who is looking at the repulsive and seeing it as attractive, while observing everything that's going on in the mind and the body. That's Dhammanupassana. It's a heavier, more advanced level of practicing vipassana. Because you have the capacity now, you have evolved your practice to the point where it's mature enough, cultivated enough, developed enough for you to still maintain stillness. You're also watching your bojjhangas. All these things. It's not like you having to work on several different computers at the same time. It's not like that. It's just happening. It's like driving a car. I used to watch, when I was a teenager, I used to watch my father drive a car, and there's the rear view mirror, there's the side mirror, there's the passenger side mirror, and you have the front of the car, but then he had to turn behind him towards the left and then towards the right. Which one are you going to pay attention? And then you have to drive? I said, I'm not doing this. This is too much for my brain. My head hurts just watching you. And then you start seeing this. No, that's why people say, you want me to watch my body, my walking, every step? Are you serious? Maybe I could do for 5 steps, Kayanapasana. It's too much for them, initially, when they're first starting to practice. And then they start practicing, just like when you say, oh, Bhante, I can only sit for 20 minutes. When I first started sitting, 5 minutes was unbelievably hard for me. My brother used to sit for 20. He used to do TM at the time, Transcendental Meditation, back in the Middle East. So I would look at him, it's like, what is that? What is that? 5 minutes for me was incredibly long. And I said, if he could do it, I could do it. And then I went my separate ways, and I was just watching different things, hearing sounds, just paying attention. And all of a sudden it became 30, 35 minutes. And you're the perfect example of this. Many of you have told me, Bhante, I can just sit for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Some of you were sitting more than 3 hours, 4. How is that possible? Pushing the boundaries with compassion. Not all of a sudden. Tolerate yourself. If he so wishes, while I meditate thus, may I remain equanimous, mindfully present, and clearly comprehending the experience. Whether I'm observing what is attractive or repulsive, he is able to do so, as he remains equanimous, mindfully present, and clearly comprehending the experience. It is in this manner, friend, that I define the undertaking of the 4 foundations of mindfulness to be practiced by a bhikkhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sooner or later, we must come to the realization that suffering is known by the person who is finally standing up to feel all its nuances without hiding. Suffering must be experienced, not run away from. We have been programmed, because of evolution, to run away from anything that is uncomfortable. Fear, I was mentioning in the beginning. What is fear? When you dig deep, 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 deep down, it's causing us suffering. That's why the person is fighting it. That's why the person is acquiescing to it, handing over everything, and then their dignity as well. Just leave me alone. That's why the person is fighting it. That's why all these things are happening, suffering. But it has to be fully experienced, understood, appreciated. That is when we start to really get on the path. Everybody knows suffering, but not everybody knows suffering. You need to understand, appreciate all its nuances. And that's when it starts. You start to see the first noble truth. And you must be aware of it. You must be mindful of it. You cannot know it intellectually. Forget about it. I see a lot of people, the majority of people that I've come across in Dhamma circles have a lot of information in their heads, but very little experience of suffering. Experience that is understood and appreciated, that is. Appreciation of suffering must be there. Because that's the thing that's going to allow us to learn, not run away from. Well, he insulted me. But, okay, how did that feel like? Terrible. Okay, let's leave him out of this. Terrible. Could you give it another name? Yeah, it hurt. Okay, how do you visualize? How do you describe it? Did you suffer? Yes. Okay, can we call it suffering? Yes. Okay, let's sit with that. Did you see what happened? I'm bringing it closer and closer home. You're not looking at the other person as the cause for my suffering, which is what the world functions on. You're taught to always point the finger. You're the one who caused me suffering. We never look at the context. We never look at the background story. What was happening? Did I have anything to do with this? What were the factors? Remember, we did at least 2 suttas on Paticcasamuppada. What is Paticcasamuppada? If not looking at things contextually, looking for the causal factors. What are the causes and conditions for this situation to arise? Well, he hit her, or he hit him, or she hit him. Okay. Linear or multi-contextual? If she wasn't there, if he wasn't there, would he have gotten hit? Very simple. If he didn't do that, if she didn't do that, if this element or this variable wasn't there, if it was different, would the outcome have been different? Yeah. Now you're using your right brain. This is dangerous, what's happening in the world. This is not over-exaggeration. This is what's happening. People used to have the capacity to look at situations and not be quick at conclusion. Oh, it's because of this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you weigh all the factors? Did you get all the details? Well, that's what they're saying, so that must be it. Really? Because I just tossed about 2 million, at least, years of human evolution out the window. Darwin is actually turning in his grave. There goes the scientific revolution. All of it out. The Dhamma is out the door, completely. If we call ourselves practitioners of the Dhamma, and we don't apply Paticcasamuppada in our lives and in our conclusions of what it is, and Google doesn't count, by the way. Google is one of the most organized, corrupt, channeled, controlled Platforms. Everybody knows this. You know, the internet was invented by the US military, right? They had it for at least 40, 50 years, right? Before they released it to the world. So, again, these are facts that nobody wants to think about. Because it makes us, yeah, but it's kind of pushing the boundaries on what I've accepted as reality. And don't, Bhante, please, let's keep it here, in this. If you're getting that feeling, guess what it is? It's pushing the boundaries of your ignorance. Because that means you're not looking at things contextually. Because that's what the system is having us do. And it's invading our own practice. That's why I'm talking about this. That's why. Because it's affecting people's practice. Because I've seen people's practice go downhill during the last 3 years. People have become less able to practice Dhamma Vichaya. For me, that is cause for alarm. Serious alarm. So when I see a bhikkhu or someone giving a Dhamma talk, famous or non-famous, Ajahn, as if business as usual, they're going on and they're talking about kusala, kusala. What are you doing? Nobody's talking about what's happening in the world. That's terrible. What kind of a Dhamma is this? You're keeping the status quo. Remember what I was saying about acquiescing? Sitting in the room with big elephants, pink, yellow dots, all these things, elephants, sitting in the room with you, and you're not even talking about the elephants. I'm not talking about the yellow dots, pink dots. The elephants are not being acknowledged. If you notice, I'm talking about plural here. Oh, okay, so the Ajahn, the Venerable, the Bhante is not talking about this, so it should be fine. What is happening? No, it should not be fine. Your Dhamma Vichaya has to be penetrating every layer of your existence, every layer of life, everything you hear, everything that is presented to you, everything that you are told to believe. You must do your own research. Google doesn't count, by the way. Years ago when Google came out, like 20 years ago when we were in the university, even the professors at that time would tell us, at that time when Google was a little bit more reputable, don't look at the first 3 pages. They're irrelevant to what you're looking for your research. This was over 20 years ago, I'm talking. Look at page number 3, 6, to get to the crux of whatever it is that you're really looking, to the fleshy part, the meaty part of what you're looking. Because the first 3 have paid for that. My brother had a website company, had actually domain company. And people had to pay if they wanted their websites to be on the first page. When you put something in the search engine, let's say car. Well, people have paid to get their websites open first. It's not like by luck. Well, you're looking at it, you don't have time to go to the 3rd page. You just want to make a quick decision, including the news. Easy. Everybody talks about scientific papers these days. Nobody knows anything about science, apparently, because they never go beyond the title of the essay, the article. And everybody talks science, apparently. Everybody became a scientist overnight. The very simple thing that you need to do is to read the article, not the title. Because so many times you're going to actually discover, by the time you get to the conclusion, oftentimes they will have to present, if not always, any conflict of interest at the end. And they have to present what members of society they selected as their subject. And truthfully present what the outcome of the research was, truthfully. In spite of the fact that the title says something totally different. Now, what people have been reading are the titles of articles. Terrible. That's how dumb we have become. And we say, well, science proves it. Well, where'd you get that? I'm curious. I like to ask why, which makes people very uncomfortable. Why? When I was a trainer, people would come and say, oh, I like to get six-pack muscles, like in my abdomen, rectus abdominis, all these transverse muscles, all these obliques. I say, okay. Meanwhile, I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, I'm calculating contextually. Why, I would ask. And they would say, well, because it makes me look good and I can fit in better clothing. Okay, why? They say, because I would be more attractive to the opposite sex. Okay, that's legitimate. Why? What do you mean, why? Well, why? Well, because I feel good. When you feel good, what happens? I feel happy. We got to the point. It's not the rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscles. You are looking to be happy. Let's work on that, while we're also working towards getting your six-pack. See? We're not doing this work, though. We're lazy. As Dhamma students, we cannot afford to be lazy. You need to be smarter, wiser, and more courageous to not buy into whatever it is that they're throwing at you. Not to just bite it. Bait and hook and everything. Use the Dhamma to understand life. And the Dhamma is not separate from the life that you're experiencing in the world today, especially. This is a difficult time. We're living in a much difficult time as a population, as humanity, than Lord Buddha's time. Do you know that? Or any of the eras, any of the time periods since then? Because there's an attack on all levels, especially the Dhamma. You might not realize it because nobody's talking about this. I have to talk about this. That's why I'm talking about this. So, no point in blaming someone for your suffering. Suffering is happening. Okay, let me learn from it. Period. That should be the end of your discussion with yourself. Don't look outside of you for your mess-ups. It's your fault. Okay, why? Let me not do them again. Where is the error? Okay, is there a pattern here? Okay, let's look at you're doing paticca samuppada. It's not these fancy terms, upadana, sankhara, vedana. Who cares? Your life is the perfect example. Use your own vocabulary. Use your own emotions, your states of mind. Use satipatthana. That's where paticca samuppada is, your life. Not in a book, not in a Dhamma book, not in a Dhamma talk, Dhamma sharing. It's in your life. Because unfortunately, when we're not finding a culprit, somebody to blame, we're inventing them these days. Which is sad. Which is sad. And the society and the advertising agencies, the news, the world, global politics is encouraging that mindset. These are not separate from the Dhamma. Please be able to realize that. This is not separate. Whatever I'm talking about is not separate from the Dhamma. It is very much merged into the Dhamma. It's become like milk and water, sadly. That's how deep it is, because they're affecting everything. Families are breaking apart. Do you know that? Family members are looking at each other with suspicion. So, everyone can feel suffering, but not everyone can understand it. Or at least tries to. This path, however, is for those who do, not for those who don't. Plain and simple. You can have the look, you can have the outfit, you can have the name, the upasaka, upasika name. You can go through all the routines. You can feel good about all the things that you're doing for the community. Nope. You're far away from the path. unless you try to understand your own suffering and stop looking outside of you for the cause of it. And that has everything to do with understanding the Four Noble Truths, which comes through the practice of the Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. And this is where I will stop and complete the Dhamma talks for this lovely series of days that comprise this, make up this 10 days retreat. So I hope this was, not just this, but the suttas that I had selected for you to help you, to support you during this retreat have been helping you to understand, to gain better understanding of your own experience and the Dhamma especially. And yourself, that's it. Because I don't see a separation between you and the Dhamma. It's convincing the person to see that, oneself. So I would ask if there are any questions. I would try to answer. I will be giving the last talk here this Saturday on another sutta, which is part of the weekly Pali suttas that I had begun here about 4 months ago. So I forgot which one is. Oh, Aninja Sutta, yes. Aninja, immovable states. So, any questions? Or are you sparing me? Bhante is exhausted, so we shouldn't ask him questions. It's okay. Yes? Huh? Okay. Watch the mind. When I know some of you, if not most of you, and it's natural, the last night of the retreat, people start getting more and more chatty. Talkative. There's the excitement. It's almost like, holidays. It's like, yes, I'm free, type of a thing. We're almost there. We're out the gate, type of a thing. Be more interested in your mind and not what the other person is saying. Not what the other person is doing. Be more interested in looking at your own mind, your own behavior, and especially your own inner dialogue while they're talking. So this is compassionate ignoring, if you want to call it that. You're compassionately ignoring for the sake of higher purpose, meaning vipassana. You're actually doing satipatthana of your own thoughts. You're watching whether I have samma vacha or not. You're smiling, you're looking, you're nodding at them. Yes, yes, yes. Every once in a while you drop in and you start saying, okay, he's going to ask me questions afterwards. I'm not listening to him. Okay, I might as well hear some of the words, but you're more interested in what's happening in your mind in relation to what they're saying. And this is just one example. When someone walks into your store, into your shop, into your office, into your board meeting, whatever it is, be more interested in not what they're wearing, what they're saying, how they look, how they smell, but what your body's reaction to all those things are. This is when you become truly practitioner of viveka, seclusion, in the midst of the hub of the noise of a modern living situation. You could be in the middle of a metropolitan area, in the middle of New York City or Tokyo or Calcutta or KL, and you can still be secluded. In the middle of the city, outside. You could still be very secluded. So don't tell yourself, oh, in order for me to be secluded, I have to do this. No, it's a mental state. Don't forget that.
That's all for today. If you have any concerns or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. Thank you for watching, and I am sure that our program on Buddha Dharma TV will be a source of inspiration from many of peace lovers around the globe. Good night. Namo Buddhaya.